use it for my Navy SEALs, I use it for my soldiers, I use it for a lot of people, and it does amazing. It puts it on this machine, it works immediately, which rarely. And by the way, ketamine, you can name it. My office, they come with stuff like that. So I have to do with all those things, so be aware of the things. So if depression is not a disease, it's actually a symptom of what's going on in your life. As a society, we forgot God, which is kind of interesting because then there's no values, right? I want to give you guys a really cool story. Many years ago, I had a company came and offered me a job. It was a Tuesday, I still remember the day. They offered me a lot of money. And it was a marijuana company, that's what I'm gonna say, right? And I saw the contract with 3 pages. Oh shit! I was seeing patients. I remember saying, I told my patient, listen, I gotta go back. I got on my car, drove 100 miles an hour, went home, and I told my wife, sit down, and I passed this contract to her and I said, I'm gonna retire. My wife looked at it like this, grabbed the contract, threw it in the trash. That's how women give you cancer, right? And I'm like, what? I grabbed that paper, said, sit down and look at this, look at this. That's a lot of money, right? And she goes, okay, with what you know about marijuana, will you write a prescription for your children? And I said, fucking no way. My wife said, I didn't know I married a man that his values are worth $5 million. And walked away. I got on my car with my tail up in my ass, right? Drive to the guy and said, I can sign it. The dude looked at me and said, listen, I'm the lawyer for this company. Dude, this contract cannot get any better. So my wife said, I cannot freaking sign it. I'm here as a doctor with Rick Collins, which sucks, you know? But that's okay, you know? But I just want to tell you, sometimes you got to look at what you're doing with your life, which is much more important than taking a hormone. Yes, hormones do play a role on it, okay, but it's not, doesn't matter. I have people that have massive amount of levels, and actually, as a physician, I think I have a lot of bodybuilders. I even block bodybuilders from coming to my office. For the Arnold, my office will be full with bodybuilders, so I specifically put a block. If you're a bodybuilder, I didn't want to see you. I know that sounds bad, but that's the way it goes. But how many bodybuilders do I see that are depressed? I would say almost every single one of them, okay? Why? Because they're looking at how I look. My whole center is how do I look. I have a lady here named Mariah Leggett. I haven't seen her for years. It's very good to see you, woman. Very good to see you, okay? So I want to say this, be aware that depression is not a disease, it's a symptom. You need to find out why it's a symptom. Why are you having that? I know that was I don't want steroids, but any questions about what I said?
I do have another question for you though, real quick. Do you see any relation with sexual activity in men and prostate cancer? That's just
yes, actually yes. This is, oh, I'm gonna enjoy this one. We get prostate cancer and it's freaking woman's fault, by the way. I want this on TV here. It is woman's fault, okay? The prostate tissue makes what? You guys know what it makes? No, semen fluid, not the semen fluid, right? So think about a warehouse that you have that makes a seminal fluid, okay, for you to be able to have orgasm and reproduce, right? Well, now this warehouse, and I'm paying a bunch of Puerto Ricans to work on that warehouse, right? the Puerto Ricans are working on that warehouse, right? And they're doing great. And all of a sudden you get married, right? And remember, they were working all the time, having sex all the time. Well, now you got married. All of a sudden you cut down to once a week, right? You start firing the Puerto Ricans out of the warehouse, so you're not using them all the time, right? All of a sudden you're now 50 years old and you're getting it once every 4 months, right? So now that prostate that was working and active all the time, what happened to it? You fire all the Puerto Ricans. Now there's nobody there. What happens when you leave a house by itself? Starting to deteriorate. So yes, there's an association between decreased sexual activity and prostate cancer. I'm going to use the word association, no causation, but I'm saying it's a causation. So a person that gets more sex later in life will have a less chance of getting prostate cancer because that warehouse have to work. Woman, what? Defend the woman here. And men are lazy asses, right? We have, you know, we're talking about men likes two things, F and F. Food and the other one, right? I'm gonna use, I have kids here, so I'm gonna use.
Ronald, look right into that camera. Exactly what you just said. Justin, zoom right in on that.
Well, I'm gonna use the H and
The
H.
editor is gonna be very busy.
I'm gonna use the H and H. Hunger and horny, okay? So that's men. Now, freaking women, oh shit, they're a conventional oven. Pretty heat, pretty warm, semi-warm, a little warm. So you have to have flowers, the bed made, I mean shit, the light bulb's working. It is insane what a woman wants, okay? I'm just telling you guys, be aware of that, okay? So, I know you guys are laughing at me, but yes, sexuality makes a huge, I would say, benefit for a man as they get older. The more sex you have, the better it is for the prostate.
Wonderful. I got one more question for you.
Yes, sir.
Free T and total T.
Okay,
What if you have somebody that's got really elevated total, free T? I mean,
total T and
low
free T. Okay, I do not use total, and I might be against this people here. I don't use total testosterone that much. The only reason I use it because I have Rick Collins on my corner. So I have to have a total testosterone for the freaking lawyers to see it, right? My job is I will always protect physicians when you're a dumbass. And people come and say, no, this you have to do. So I always try to defend them. Total testosterone is mostly for us, the physicians, to look at a number and give you an idea of where you are. I do not believe on that number that much. I believe on free testosterone. For example, I have a patient that has a 317 level, but his free levels are 50. That guy feels awesome.
Yeah.
No complaints. I don't want to do anything with that guy.
Yeah.
Got it? Now, different routes. Let me explain this. Different routes of testosterone will give you different free levels. So you have pellets versus nasal versus anal versus vaginal versus injectable versus oral versus UQ versus stretches. All those will give you different levels. And there's 10 ways for you to get testosterone, by the way, for those people out there. So be aware of that. So yes, for me, testosterone is much more important than total testosterone. And SHBG. These two people believe in SHBG. I don't believe in shit SHBG. Why? Because SHBG is a very interesting molecule. I did my master's in exercise, so I like to look at everything. And I read like a dog, right? SHBG is a molecule actually that the heart, lungs use. I want to teach you guys this. And they might find me, but I will spank them with research, by the way. Okay? SHBG is a false. Which one is the most powerful lowering agent for SHBG? DHT. What do you say? Okay. Albumin and DHT. Absolutely wrong. Insulin is the most.
Yeah, insulin, but it's not an androgen.
No, I said, what is the most? What I said.
And heals free testosterone.
Wait a second. Heals free testosterone. I like this. Okay. If I'm going to follow mortality, death, people with the lowest SHBG die sooner. Look it up. Look it up right now. Okay. That's right, because insulin. So I said, which one is the most powerful lowering agent? I didn't say androgen agent, which is insulin. Now, when your levels of insulin are high, you have a higher chance of dying. Now, do I want to have lower SHBG? Absolutely not. You look at SHBG as a molecule, it's actually amazing, especially on people with asthma, which they have a look. Remember, I look at weird cases. So I have people with asthma. When people come with severe asthma or COPD and they have very low SHBG, they have issues. If the SHBG goes up, actually they feel better. Now, remember, I'm seeing different than they are.
Doesn't it block free testosterone?
Okay, he's saying those it blocks free testosterone, okay, which is a very interesting subject. Now, SHBG binds a zero hormone binding globulin, which doesn't only bind only testosterone, it binds what else? Estrogen too, okay? So, this is very interesting. I used to measure SHBG in my office. I did that for years. Remember, I've been a doctor for 30 years. When I see something that is worthless, what do I do with it? I throw it away. So I start looking at SHBG and I like to talk to my patients. And I like to talk about mortality rate, cancers, I like to look at everything. Okay, the lower your SHBG, the higher your chance of getting a disease. Why? Because I've seen it in my office. I'm not saying that SHBG doesn't bind testosterone. The only problem is this. So, okay, and I know some people, I'm a hypocrite because I'm not taking testosterone, okay? I'm not taking any hormones right now. I'm getting old. I told Rick today that I'm gonna have to base myself on testosterone, right? I'm kneading it a little bit, right? So I look at SHBG as a molecule that actually affects other issues of health. Now, one of the biggest increasers of SHBG, believe it or not, is what? Birth control pills, okay? I don't know if you guys know that. We give women birth control pills to have sex with us, but birth control pills kill the sex drive. Is it because it increases SHBG? No, because I look at that too. I did OB for 9 years. I want to look at that. So I look at SHBG and sex drive. And it was not even close. Nothing. There was no SHBG correlation with sex drive. I asked over 2,000 women with SHBG. There was no correlation with the SHBG and sex drive, which by me, for men, sex, horny, is the most important thing, right? So I asked women that. So I didn't see any correlation. Now, I did see correlations between mortality and SHBG levels. Now, if you guys look at SHBG, if you guys look on your phone right now and you look at SHBG and lung function, by the way, you're going to find it very interesting. If you look at SHBG and how it affects the heart, you guys are going to find it very interesting. Now, can you guys lower SHBG? No, what you guys do is block it, okay? You block it. And the only way to lower SHBG is eating carbohydrates because increasing your insulin and your SHBG goes down. Now, to be happy, some people eat carbohydrates because what? Serotonin levels. Increases serotonin levels, it lowers cortisol because insulin and cortisol don't want to be together. Insulin is the freaking only drug that lowers sugar. You guys know that? Only thing that lowers sugar is insulin. Now, do we need insulin to use sugar? What do you say? It's a metabolizer. Actually, no. Insulin is only actually enrolled there to affect muscles and fat. That's what insulin works. You do not need insulin to absorb sugar. The most abundant receptor for sugars are called SGLT2. Okay? And you don't need sodium glucose dependent receptor. The reason we have so many of those is because we do not need insulin. So you will not die because you will absorb sugar anyway. Now, muscles and fat required by a receptor called GLUT4 required to absorb sugar into the muscle. Okay? So that's why. What is it? Testosterone improves insulin? Yes, absolutely, because you put more muscle. Okay, so be aware of that. Now, I want to say this. Do I need to lower my SHBG? No, you don't need to. I wouldn't do it. Unless you want to. If I want testosterone, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't even worry about it. Now, you guys looked at the articles that I just asked you to look at, SHBG heart function and SHBG lung function. And you guys, on my way out, you can tell me. Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna have Rick go now.
All right, well, what's interesting here is you've got, certainly professionals who have walked the walk. You've got Dawn, who's competed in figure. You've got George here, who has competed successfully in bodybuilding. I was a competitive bodybuilder. There's one person here I see who has not yet competed, and so
No.
that's
Bodybuilding.
powerlifting you have,
Yeah.
but there's masters competitions that are coming up. And I think that, what do you say for next year? And Eric, yes. So I want to just take it in a slightly different direction and just cover the legal aspects of testosterone. So testosterone is present in the bodies of every man, woman, and child in the world, right? And yet it is a controlled substance under US law. When George said in Greece you can walk into a pharmacy and pick up some testosterone, Eric's eyes bulged out of his head, right? Because here in the United States, it is a Schedule III controlled substance, in the same category with Vicodin and various other controlled substances and narcotics. Why? Well, in 1988, a sprinter by the name of Ben Johnson. Who knows the name Ben Johnson here? Okay. Canadian sprinter, ran really, really fast at the Seoul Olympics, won the gold medal. Yay, Ben Johnson beat the American Carl Lewis, right? And what happened? He tested positive for Winstrol, an anabolic steroid. And the sports world went crazy because now we're facing this situation where the integrity of sports, the level playing field. Whether you believe there is a level playing field, we can talk about, but the concept of a level playing field went out the window. He beat the American, and so a bunch of hearings were held in Washington. One of the leaders of the hearings to do something about this was actually Senator Joe Biden at the time.
Yeah,
And
right.
so you had this push by anti-doping officials and members of Congress to save the children from the scourge of testosterone and other anabolic steroids. And so they relegated steroids, including testosterone, to Schedule III status. Interestingly, and not many people know this, but the FDA, the DEA, the American Medical Association, and the National Institute on Drug Abuse all sent representatives to Congress to testify against scheduling anabolic steroids as a controlled substance, under the idea that it doesn't really belong there. You know, this is a hormone, it's present in our bodies. There's no evidence that it has psychoactive effects, and there was some testimony that the idea of an addictive potential of testosterone. So Congress hung its hat on that and made it into a controlled substance. What is the significance of that? A controlled substance can only be prescribed for a legitimate medical purpose in the ordinary course of a doctor's practice, right? So what is a legitimate medical purpose? We've heard a lot about testosterone replacement therapy. Yeah, okay, if you have hypogonadism, meaning that you have low testosterone levels, sure, testosterone replacement can help. Also, testosterone can be prescribed now more and more frequently for gender dysphoria, a person who is assigned female at birth, wanting to either become male or less female, more a non-binary person who is looking to masculinize to some extent. And I'm going to talk about that tomorrow in my talk tomorrow afternoon about gender dysphoria and muscle dysmorphia, so-called bigorexia, bodybuilding. Most steroid, I got to tell you, and we're going to go through what the criteria are tomorrow. Most bodybuilders, I would say almost 100% of steroid users would fit the criteria for muscle dysmorphia, which is a DSM, an actual diagnosis for a mental disorder. And sort of the way that we treat people with that disorder versus the gender dysphoria, what used to be called gender identity disorder, is so very different in this country. So bottom line is, TRT, fine. Bodybuilding, not fine. Steroids, including testosterone, cannot be prescribed in the United States for building muscle in a healthy person. So guy walks in to see Eric Serrano and says, Doc, my levels are normal, okay, but I'd love to put a little size on. I'm going to Cancun this summer, and I want to look a little bit more jacked. I want to look better in a t-shirt when I go on the beach. What are you going to say to that person?
I'm gonna go wreck.
Actually, so a doctor would be committing a felony under federal law if that prescription is not for a medical purpose, and the possession then of that substance would not be pursuant to a legitimate prescription, and so therefore would be an illegal prescription, right? So why we did all that, thanks Ben Johnson, right? It's funny because I see Dr. Ken Kanakin here, our guest from Canada, who runs an extremely wonderful symposium called the Swiss Symposium. I've spoken there before. He does a phenomenal job. And 1 year, I guess maybe 3 years ago or so. 2016, time flies. He invited Ben Johnson, the Ben Johnson, to come and speak at the Swiss Symposium. And so I was on a panel with Ben Johnson. And now, as I said before, most of my practice is in the area where bodybuilding, sports, athletics of different performance intersects with the law, either in a criminal, administrative, regulatory kind of way. And you know, I was referred to as the steroid lawyer by George here, and I've probably done more steroids defense than anybody. And it's been a large part of my practice. So I'm sitting there with Ben Johnson, I'm saying to myself, I owe my career to this guy, right? I mean, this guy's doping case. Yes, but we have pictures together, you know, shaking hands, you know, I kind of said it to him, you know, I really owe, you know, my family thanks you, Ben. My family thanks you, because but for the 1988 Seoul Olympics, steroids might never, and testosterone might never have become a controlled substance. And, you know, obviously the downside is that I've represented a lot of really good people who got jammed up in steroid cases. These are, you know, who don't belong in a criminal justice system, certainly don't belong in a federal criminal justice system. And it's been my privilege, and I'm very lucky and blessed to have been able to have the skills and the knowledge to be able to dig them out of that hole. But Ben Johnson, yes.
Ben at that panel said that he was on 5 milligrams of Winstrol a day.
Yeah.
You didn't need any.
You don't need more.
Would you show up positive on a drug test at that low of
It's a
level?
metabolizing substance that show up.
Yeah, well,
Winston doesn't show up with the metabolism.
But actually, you don't need more than 5 milligrams because you need increasing velocity in speed and in strength, you know. So it's not about bodybuilding making huge muscles.
No, well, he was already.
although he was pretty jacked.
He is still pretty jacked.
But bodybuilders use 50 a day, you know.
Bodybuilders tend to, I mean, and we didn't talk about it really, but, you know, one of the differences between TRT and what bodybuilders use is dose, right? And our good doctors will say, right, you know, the old saying that the difference between a medicine and a poison is what?
Dose.
So 200 milligrams of testosterone a week may very well improve a lot of your well-being. 20,000 milligrams of testosterone a week, you know, it's like maybe a glass of red wine a night. Probably good, maybe cardioprotective, still the jury's out on that, but maybe a good thing, right? 2 bottles of scotch a night. What, you know, so I've seen doses, and you have too.
Rick is not lying, all of that.
I mean, crazy, and bodybuilders, and that actually, you know what, that actually ties into the whole muscle dysmorphia thing. You know, the more is better, I gotta get bigger. You know, there are bodybuilders who are on 8,000 milligrams of test and DECA and Trenbolone and a whole cornucopia of bodybuilding drugs. And they look in the mirror at 270 pounds and 8% body fat and say, bro, I gotta gain some size. And, you know, it's a spectrum, right? I mean, like I said before, I think most bodybuilders and virtually all steroid users have some element, male and female, have some element of this sort of disconnect, this incongruence between what they see in the mirror and the reality of it. And that's something that, you know, I'm gonna talk about more tomorrow. Yes?
Rick, this is for you, but also with the panel. Do you see in the future, with everything else being deregulated, so different types of marijuana, different types of drugs and all that, do you see anabolic steroids? And then for the physicians up there, what do we need to educate the doctors? Because up in Canada, there's only a few that even know what we're talking about. And I think the United States is very.
So I'm gonna get into that in more detail tomorrow, but I'll give you a teaser now. And that is that the strange bedfellows, there are strange bedfellows, right? So the bodybuilding community has long sort of thought, why don't we have an advocate to try to change these laws so that only psychoactive drugs and drugs of abuse are scheduled, and testosterone and anabolic steroids are not treated, they're not criminalized in this way, right? Got nowhere. But bodybuilders have zero clout in Washington, D.C. It was never going to go anywhere. But now there's a new ally that is pushing for this, and it is the trans community.
Right.
It is the transgender community, under the theory that for those assigned female at birth, I don't say biological females, I don't wanna get canceled. For those assigned female at birth who are looking to transition along the spectrum toward, if not totally at, a male identity, their argument is the controlled substance status stigmatizes the medicine that we're using, that the criminalization of testosterone is anti-trans and transphobic. And they are, and I'm gonna go through some of it tomorrow, including some writings that I've seen and articles that are pushing and even suggesting that testosterone either be reduced in its schedule from Schedule 3 or be removed completely from the Controlled Substances Act in order to destigmatize the trans community.
I send little hearts always to, I love it, man.
Now, what
We love
would
each
you
other.
doctor-
It's all love. It's a love fest.
So if a medical doctor wanted to become more knowledgeable in working with someone with testosterone, what have you seen out there that it could, whether it's seminars, books, or is it just by experience?
The problem is that testosterone is a medication, it's not a drug, it's a medication that makes you feel so much better. Like he said, like she said, that when you get better, you don't wanna take if your car is not broken, are you gonna take it to a mechanic?
Right.
So now I'm giving you a medication that you feel way better, you don't wanna come and see me. Yes, and you're healthier, so they don't wanna see that. That's not good for the
And
industry.
actually, testosterone ruins the big pharma. It ruins statics. It ruins metformin. It ruins.
No money and healthy people.
No,
It
who
ruins
gave the-
drugs that
those legislators that make
improve
those
the
laws?
bone fractures, you know? So it's a cheap medication that does the job of several others, Viagra also. So big pharma doesn't like this.
Oh, okay.
All right, before we take a question, here's what we're gonna do. I want you guys to think of all some really good questions. We are gonna take a 5-minute break, so these guys can do that for a minute. Do that, you guys can too. So 5 minutes, we'll come back and get all your questions in your head, because we're gonna jump into those.
Stop this. Yeah, yeah.
He's good.